Now, your friends and family round, they'll invest in you just because of you. And if you're a repeat entrepreneur, investors will invest in you because they believe you're going to figure it out. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, the bar is higher. And so your friends and family, that's easy money. By the time you go get to that seed round, it's nice to have demonstrated, listen, these customers will actually pay for what we have. And we found a real target here. We just need to have some capital to start, to put that sales team in place, that marketing campaign in place to really take that to the next level.
Welcome to Austinpreneur, our show about the stories that made Austin, Texas a global hub for startups. The show is produced by Capital Factory and hosted by me, NickSpiller. As a reminder, by joining Capital Factory, you can plug into the ecosystem where the stories on this show were set. Learn more about us at capitalfactory.com.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Austinpreneur podcast, where we discuss the technology and innovation that's made Texas a global hub for startups and venture capital. We have a very special guest today, our mentor here at Capital Factory, Sam Goodner. Sam's a serial entrepreneur, investor, and mentor to our companies and a lot of other entrepreneurs out there. He launched and built a company called Catapult Systems, built that into one of the top Microsoft-focused consulting firms in the U.S. Built that for a couple of decades, then sold it to Chinasoft. He also is CEO and helped grow a company here in Austin called FlashParking. I know it's used in a lot of the garages around town. I think maybe this garage.
Yes, this garage too.
That's right. My truck doesn't fit in this garage. So I thought it might be. But before his career in tech, he served as an infantry officer in the Swiss Army, and he remains a dual citizen of Switzerland and the United States. And most recently, and the topic of tonight's conversation, he is author of a book here on the desk called Like Clockwork, Running Your Business with Swiss Army Precision. Please join me in welcoming Sam to the podcast.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for coming in and sitting down with us.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
Congrats on the new book.
Thanks. It officially launches on Tuesday.
That's right, which I believe is the airing date for this podcast. So you can go buy it right now. Where can people buy the book?
Amazon, hardback, paper copy, Audible in my voice, sadly.
There you go.
All the options.
Excellent. And that includes the gift shop here at Capital Factory.
That does include the gift shop here at Capital Factory.
Awesome. Well, in your book, you compare a business to a Swiss watch and even Swiss precision in general. What are the gears you speak of that founders should focus on when building their first companies?
Yeah. So I tend to focus on what we call operational scalability. So if you're just 1, 2, 3 person entrepreneur, that's probably not in my wheelhouse. I usually step in and start helping entrepreneurs when they're ready to scale. And oftentimes, very often, I see entrepreneurs hit a plateau, right? They're real successful when it's them and a few of their friends, and then suddenly they don't know how to take it from there. Yeah. And so operational scalability, I define as, how can you put the right people and set up the right systems so that your business can not only run but scale without you in the middle of every single decision, right? That conversation usually starts with sales. Right? That's usually the first question I get from when I mentor here at Capital Factory and they're ready to do that. Either the founder or their partner, whoever is the salesperson of the 2 or 3, is like, okay, I'm ready to hire my first salesperson or sales team. We just closed a round of funding. How do I do that? Right. And I start by saying, well, I'm not sure you're ready yet. Let's talk about your business. Yeah. And I always start with the question of, all right, so tell me what you're best in the world at. Usually they're surprised at that question, like best in the world. That seems like a tall order. Like, okay, how are you different than everyone else in your industry? How do you stand out? And best in the world, that's best in your market. So for example, we have this great bakery here in Austin, Swedish Hill.
Yeah.
I would say Swedish Hill is the best in the world bakery for Clarksville, right? And so, best in the world in Clarksville. So I start with that question. And what I'm looking for is, do they have an unfair advantage? Because otherwise they're going to compete on price. But until they figure it out, so where do you start when you don't know how to answer that question? Well, you start with, let's look at your customers. And most startups start with a shotgun approach, meaning they don't really know what their product market fit is yet. So they're going to try cast a really wide net and try a lot of everything. And when I sit down with them, they're kind of all over the board. I'm like, okay, let's start with them. Which are you most profitable customers? Why are they your most profitable customers? Who have the shortest sales cycle? Which ones can buy your product or solution or service out of the box? Which ones call the support line the least? Which ones have the highest renewal rates? And then you start zeroing in on this target, right? And once they've figured out who that is, then I'm like, all right, we have to focus in on that. Let's ignore all this other noise for a second, and let's really focus in on that very specific audience, that target market for which your product or service is a perfect fit, and then where you have an unfair advantage. So only when you understand that are you ready to actually go have other people help sell. And then before you can just go hire a salesperson or sales team, assuming you're B2B. If you're B2C, then obviously you're looking at a marketing play. But sure, for the B2B companies, they're looking at building a sales team. And I'm like, you can't just hire a salesperson and then send them out into the market and cross your fingers. Well, they're like, well, I'm going to hire a really experienced salesperson. I'm like, that's not going to help. You have to codify that part of your business. You have to put together a sales playbook. What's a sales playbook? Well, a sales playbook is literally a document, right? If you hire a star quarterback and you bring him to your football team, you can't just say, go out and play. They're not going to know how to work with the rest of the team. They're going to fail in that role. It's the same thing with the salesperson or sales team. So a sales playbook identifies who exactly is your target audience, not just the type of company, industry, location, size, but who is the decision maker in that company? Like, what do they look like? What is their job title? How do you get in front of them? Can you reach them with a phone call, with an email? Because you've tried everything as the entrepreneur. Do you have to go wait for them to come out of the office in the lobby? What is an effective sales pitch for them to actually take your call or listen to you? What kind of objections are you going to run into? How to overcome those objections? Sorry. And then, what does a proposal look like, et cetera, et cetera. So only once you've figured that out yourself as one of the co-founders of the business, and you've codified that into a sales playbook, are you ready to then go build a sales team that you can then hand that sales playbook to and go, okay, now you can go.
Excellent. So it sounds like, a lot of entrepreneurs, they're hustlers. They get out there, they get some traction, they get some customers, and they want to scale, right?
Yes.
They want to get to scale, but you're saying often it's pump the brakes and ask some questions. It sounds like you shared some here on the podcast. I'm sure you could find some more in the book. But really those questions are around identifying who your best customers are. I guess the interesting thing when you asked most profitable, shorter sales cycle, least support, you didn't say your largest customers.
Not always the case.
Yeah.
Right?
And so how does that play into the factors, just how big they are? If they're not profitable, how should you even approach those customers?
I'm going to give you a great example. So one of the most recent company I helped scale is FlashParking. You mentioned them in the intro. I invested in that business. I didn't found it. I invested in that business in 2016. They had 12 employees. They were stuck at $3 million in sales. I met their young founder, Juan Rodriguez, loved what they were doing, did my due diligence, decided I can really help this company. They have something special. So I joined them as president, and I sat him down and his co-founder, Eliseo, and I asked him these same questions. And they were all over the map, as you would expect. And we started narrowing in on what's our target audience. And we established very quickly in that exercise, that took about an afternoon, that large airports were not at all at the center of our target. And yet large airports are huge parking facilities. In fact, they're some of the largest, and they're huge parking technology projects, $10 million plus each. Yeah. The problem with that is that each one of them is a custom engagement, at least a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, listen, we're not going to go after large airports at all, at least not now, not for many years. We're going to focus on this other part of the market where we can really put on the accelerator. And we did. I mean, we grew 10x in 2.5 years, right off the bat. We said, no, LAX came to us, Houston Intercontinental came to us. We said, we're not even interested in responding to the RFP. Now, fast forward to just last year, when the first large airport, in this case, Denver, was ready to take our product out of the box, we closed that deal and delivered it in less than a month. And it was a huge success, but that was years later. So your biggest customers are not always the best ones, certainly not to get started with.
Right. And maybe not your first segment to scale into.
Right.
We have, I was at Favor early in my career. We have similar stories, very, very similar learnings we had there. Two things. I was, these on-demand delivery companies were all the rage. And, we were very enticed to go and launch in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, because there's so much volume there. Right. But as you go look into it, launching anything in California and New York comes with some overhead. And then there's all these other things that came into it where it's like it's way harder to park. The streets are busier. The food's more expensive. They already had delivery in these places because it's been, and so we were, I think, one day away from launching California and pulled the plug on it for this reason. And then we also, and what led to the ultimate success in the acquisition of the company by HEB, it's the only company HEB's ever bought, was really the shift in mentality from running every favor perfectly to running every favor profitably.
Yeah.
And when you first used Favor, it was awesome as a user in the early days because it was like really good. And we always had 10% additional runner staff than we projected, so you always could get a runner immediately. Running every favor perfectly means you always have like 10% less than we need. So you always have an order for your runner whenever they're available, and you use that piece. The other thing we learned is, running a favor for an hour that was for a $5 Starbucks order is not profitable, right? Running a favor for an hour for a $150 HEB grocery order, and then you also pick up a Starbucks order on the way for another customer, that's profitable. Yeah, that really hits home to me. It's like, so much focus on big deals, big money, but it's like, who are the best customers, not necessarily the biggest customers.
Yes, absolutely.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so once you kind of answer this customer, you understand who it is you really want to scale into, you develop a repeatable sale, you codify it into a playbook.
Yep.
And this is taking all your learnings, throwing out the bad stuff you did, and selecting the best tactics that you've learned as a founder.
Yes.
You can then pass on. So this playbook's almost like a technology in of itself to allow you to enable your sales team to go execute on what you've been doing as a founder.
Yeah. And you start with sales, and then you go to every part of your business. And if you want operational scalability, you have to codify every other part of your business too. Yeah. And usually the second place you look is recruiting, right? Most young entrepreneurs, they don't have a recruiting background. They're horrible at it. They don't even know how to conduct an interview. And so getting some help around, okay. And by the way, those are the most important decisions companies make, is who you bring on board to be part of your team. I would say that's even in many cases more important than your strategy. If you have the wrong team, you can have the great strategy, you're not going to execute.
Yeah.
And so how do you go find, attract, and then filter, right? Interview for the right, not only competencies for the skills you're looking for, but culture fit, competency, core values fit. That takes some learning, and usually, there's as many books you can go read on that, but codifying that part of your business so that it's consistent, and what are the qualities you're looking for. You know how to filter through those who are not going to be a good fit. Because after a while, initially the founder can be in all the interviews up to a certain size, but very quickly that outgrows them. And so codifying that is usually number 2. And then you go for, okay, well then where's my other bottleneck, right? What are the bottlenecks in my business? To use FlashParking as an example as well, one of the bottlenecks that they had that was neither sales nor recruiting was actually going and installing this equipment all over the country. They had no idea how to do that at scale. In fact, the founder was still going on every single install. I mean, drilling holes in garages and installing kiosks. And so
Respectable, but not scalable.
yeah, we one of my co-investors and good friend Dan Sharplin, we went and hired his old operations team from his previous company that was very familiar with doing this at scale.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, as soon as we funded the company, we hired that whole team. They put in place the playbook for going and installing and using third-party installers, electricians, contractors to do that at scale. And we just killed the competition because we were the fastest to be able to do it. We took a 3-month average install process to 3 weeks. Right? So when you do it right, you can really use that as a competitive advantage.
Yep. Very interesting. I'd love to double click on the theme of the book, running your business like a Swiss precision. I mean, yeah, I remember it reminds me of when I got my first pocket knife, the Swiss Army knife. It's a very well-known tool and, very, very helpful. But tell us more, like what that really means to you as someone who's served in the Swiss Army.
Yeah, I had that happen. So first of all, we have compulsory military service in Switzerland for all men. Yep. So after high school, you're required to go to basic training for 5 months. And then if you're a soldier, you're in the reserves. You serve 3 weeks every year until you're 30. If you become an officer, that's a 2-year process, and you serve 3 weeks every year until you're 50. But basically, there's no professional military, a few instructors, but the whole male population is our army of militia, basically. Mm-hmm. And so, like all other Swiss young men, I was required to serve. I went ahead and became an officer. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as I was, I started my first company. I came back to the U.S. to go to college and started my first business here in Austin at the age of 26. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was applying all of these principles that I had learned around execution and, disciplined approach to running a business. I only later realized, that ties conveniently back to a whole bunch of stuff I learned as an officer in the Swiss Army. So I decided to make it the theme of the book. It's not a military book. It's a business book, but I thought it was a really fun theme to start every chapter with a story from my time in the Swiss Army, a principle that I learned during that time, and then later applied over the past 30 years at one of the companies I've run. And then to add to it, I interviewed 30 other entrepreneurs or CEOs and how they implemented that same practice in their business. So each chapter has a third-party case study to showcase how they did that in their business. And in some cases, it's very different than the way I did it, which is what I wanted.
Yeah. No, I thought it was very interesting. Spoke to me immediately. If you listen to the podcast or around Capital Factory, we're big supporters of our DoD.
Yes, we are.
Partners. And through that whole process, it's been interesting and very apparent how much these two communities have to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And, the BOD's here because they want to learn from the startup community, we want to find ideas, but the whole time we've been taking notes on them. And, we had President Obama in this room pitching our founders, and we got the White House advance team. We were taught how to give the tour to the president, and this is some pretty good stuff. And now every time a VIP comes through, we use that same playbook to deliver a world-class experience for someone. And that's even just one piece. These notes that I'm reading off of are very well formulated. That's because that's what they did for us. And when we were organizing our first events here, we would sit down in a room with our government partners and we'd go through every person and every talking point. And I think there's the creativity of the startup world and the innovation met with the regiment of military is what it takes to build big companies, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, speaking of
assume yours too.
Of giving tours, one of the chapters I talk about, it's called Leave Nothing to Chance. And the military story is about once a year, our base would host some foreign dignitaries. As they all the militaries do this. Right. And that year that I was an officer, we actually hosted a team from the US, a bunch of generals and all their entourage. And I described the really, put on a good show, basically, right? A whole demonstration of sort of our unit's capabilities. And the idea there was it looked fully improvised. But we had rehearsed it for days. We knew exactly where we were shooting. We knew exactly how far to lob the grenades and the mortars. And that principle, when it comes to running a business, if you're giving a presentation to your board, to a group of investors, to a customer, you want to rehearse that. You want to practice that. You might want it to look random or look improvised, but you should never improvise.
That's right.
Right? We had this whole afternoon. In 2016, when the FlashParking example, the most recent, one of the biggest objections we ran into in the industry was our competitors had sufficiently convinced all customers that you could not run a garage or surface lot from the cloud. That just wasn't going to work in 2016.
Impossible?
It was impossible. The transaction volume and speed was just too high. We're like, okay.
Challenge accepted.
And so we devised this demonstration. It was a full day. We called it, cloud conversion day. And we would invite some of our biggest prospective clients to come visit us in Austin. The co-founder and I would pick them up at the airport in my Tesla Model X, which back in the day, that was a novelty.
That was the thing.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a novelty. No one had ever ridden in one. And even from the ride from the airport to our office, being in a Tesla allowed me to point out that, this Tesla is connected to the cloud in real time. It gets regular software updates, just like our parking equipment does, over the internet. And I get new features every month that I didn't know were coming. And then we would drive by downtown to get to our office, and I would say, oh, by the way, about half the garages in Austin run our equipment. Would you guys like to actually drive through a few garages before we get to our R&D lab? Now, of course, they were going to say yes. We knew they were going to say yes. It looked like it was a random question. Of course, we had made sure that every garage that morning was not only, we don't run them, by the way, we don't own them, but our equipment was there. We toured exactly the facilities we were going to go take them through, make sure there was no trash, make sure everything was working. We went into every garage, showcased every capability, enter with the QR code, exit with a license plate read, et cetera, et cetera. And, I'll fast forward to the rest of the day, but by the time they went home at the end of the day, they probably felt like they had come back from the future.
Yeah.
By the time they got back to their respective cities. But we left every part of that day, from every minute, even when we had for lunch, where we took them afterwards, every demo was carefully choreographed, looked improvised. None of it was.
Yep. And ultimately, what I hear you saying is you delivered an experience, not just a presentation.
Completely.
Right. It's that full experience that really sells people on what you're doing. And sometimes you have to give a presentation. That's just what they expect, and it's part of it. But it's that all the pieces around the edge, the Tesla, the impromptu stops. I think some of the founders in the room get the impromptu thing, because that's what we do on our VIP tours. We're working with founders to get everything buttoned up perfect. We put you in some random spot on Capital Factory, and we walk by and oh, you should meet this entrepreneur. And then that's the serendipity. That's the manufacturing serendipity we do, and it's led to a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I think 100% of the companies that came through our cloud conversion day became customers.
Yep. Excellent. Y'all will have a chance to ask questions, so please think. I've got a handful more, but we'll have plenty of time for questions. You have a live audience here at Capital Factory.
I love it.
Everyone listening, so some awesome people here. If you're a member of Capital Factory, you get to see it live. All right, well, let's tell us the time either at Flash or Catapult that things didn't run like clockwork for you, and what you learned from that breakdown.
Yeah, I think I've made every mistake in the book. As an entrepreneur, every single mistake I could have made.
Hit every pothole on the road.
I hired the wrong people. I put in place the wrong processes or no process. I just threw people to the, one thing there's a lot of decisions you have to get right. One is as simple as you have to put the right organizational structure in place as you scale, right? When you're just 3, 4, 5, 10 people, that doesn't matter. Everybody knows everybody's job. You start scaling beyond 20, 30, 50, you got to get it right. So the very first time we opened an office in San Antonio for Catapult Systems, our consulting firm, It was a small office, so I decided to have the salespeople in San Antonio report directly to our VP of sales back in Austin, and our delivery people, our consultants, to report directly to our head of delivery in Austin as well. Total disaster, right? Nothing but finger pointing. Delivery was like, well, sales is a problem, and sales like, well, they can't deliver. They never say yes. There was no one person in charge of the success of that business unit. Put a general manager in place who had both sales and delivery reporting directly to them, had full P&L
In San Antonio.
full hire and fire authority to make those decisions. They were comped on the success of that business unit, and it just took off. And then we just duplicate that model across the rest of the country as it grew. So those kinds of questions to get them right. And sometimes you get them wrong. Like in this case, I thought, well, why do I need a local GM in San Antonio? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, we do a lot of trial and
And
error.
was it that you had the teams divided into two different orgs, or was it that they were reporting to someone out of market? Or
No, it wasn't that it was out of market. It was that there was no one person actually managing both. In other words, when they were at odds, like, should we even go after this customer?
Right.
You had one person that could go make that decision.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, I'm going to hire some people in advance of closing that deal so that we're ready to hit the ground running. I mean, all the day-to-day decisions that you have to make to run a P&L, I didn't have anybody making those decisions.
And then when you're introducing these systems, playbooks, how do you balance that with keeping the creativity in the company and the innovative spirit that you get in the early days?
Yeah. I mean, you want to put in place systems that basically encourage that. So one of the best practices that Jim Collins in his book Built to Last first highlighted is create an employee council. As you scale and you're looking for, how do I get the best ideas from the front lines of my organization, right? You want to listen to the people that are interacting with your customers, your suppliers, your vendors, right, and are the closest to the action. They oftentimes have the best ideas on where to take your business. You have to put in place some systems, to get that information
To
from them.
surface that.
So employee council is a great tool for that. We grew up to several hundred people. I continued this practice. Every 3 years, I would go meet with every single employee in the company for 15 minutes. I gave them 3 questions ahead of time to prepare. One is, tell me what you're working on right now. Number 2, where do you want to be in 5 years? And number 3, if you had my job for 6 months, what would you do differently? And they had to email me that in writing 5 minutes before our meeting. All right, my EA would set up the meeting either in Austin or their local office when I traveled there. And it was just 15 minutes. And I will tell you some of the absolute best ideas on how to grow our business or manage it more efficiently came from those types of meetings. So, but you have to force yourself to have those processes in place.
You got to create a way for those ideas to surface. Otherwise, people just go on with their job and keep the ideas to themselves or share it with folks that aren't the CEO or the president of the company.
Yeah. And you got to have a lot of fun. I mean, we had deliberate, I call them processes in place, but we had monthly fun events, not only for our employees, but and I talk about this in the book as well, getting as you grow up as a company, your employees have significant others. Eventually your employees have families. Involving them somehow in your business, getting them connected as well, right? Through information sharing, that's easy to do. And then through events, we even had an event just for the kids of our employees. We called it Catapult Kids Day. We did it in all of our offices. All the kids from ages 5 to 15 came in, and we had a whole day, themed day with T-shirts and activities for them. It makes it really difficult, by the way, for an employee to leave when your kids are asking, when's the next Catapult Kids Day? I'm serious.
Right. Yeah. No, they're key stakeholders in the company. Really.
So understanding that your employees, what they do outside of work and their families specifically is at the end of the day more important than
that's kind of like their startup in a way. Like you're running like your company, and your baby. They've got
respecting that, being inclusive of that. Most companies don't do that. Really sets you apart and makes it very sticky. You're gonna have very low turnover if you do that.
Yep. I think it was Bob Metcalf made the point. It's like there's a reason the spouses are invited to the President's Club trips.
Yes,
they're part of the reward.
Yes.
Well, at the other end of it, you talk about the importance of succession planning.
Yes.
And so what should you be thinking of early on to prepare future leaders in your company and for that ultimate, perhaps scary day where you pass the reins to the next generation of management?
Yeah, very few companies think about this. And again, I don't want to focus on the if you get hit by the bus scenario. I'm just focusing on if you're growing and scaling as a business, this naturally creates promotion opportunities for a wide range of employees in your organization. And you want that kind of opportunity for them. But you want to make sure that you think through what that means. And so we made, one of the rules at our company was, listen, before you get promoted to the next job, I want to make sure that you've trained your replacement. You have to have identified your replacement, mentored them, trained them. And so identifying mentorship opportunities, a lot like here at Capital Factory, identifying and being proactive about putting in place a mentorship program within your company. Oh my God. I mean, that it creates such stickiness. First of all, you're going to have a better company. Right? If your more junior employees have the opportunity to learn and grow through the mentorship of more senior employees, that's a place they want to stay. And through that process, the senior employees get to identify which of the more junior employees are really ready for promotion and to move quickly maybe to other parts of the organization, or maybe eventually replace them one day when they move on to that next role. So those two go in hand. Mentorship and succession planning, they're two sides of the same coin.
If you're growing fast, this happens relatively rapidly.
Yes. Right. And you want that. And by the way, you're best always look internally if there's someone in your company that you can promote when you're filling a role.
Totally.
Because that person comes with all this existing knowledge about your company, your culture, these frankly personal connections within the organization. They know how you run. And they can, if they have the ability to learn and step into a new role, then give them the training. It's way better to do that than to go hire somebody from the outside. Now, sometimes you need to bring in an outside expert, an industry expert, new ideas, or something you can't find internally, of course, right? But if you have the opportunity to work with somebody from within, you're creating again an organization. People go, I can see an opportunity for me for advancements. I want to stay here.
Yeah, it sends a great message to the company and shows there's opportunities. You're investing in your own employees, and there's some mobility.
Yes,
it's an important topic these days. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to the audience in a second, but I'm curious, what is your goal with this book? Why did you write it?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I'm here at Capital Factory, and no kidding, one of the main impetus to write the book was that I've been a mentor here for 10 years, and I find myself answering the same questions over and over and over again. And I really wanted a vehicle where I could go, hey, listen, why don't you read chapter 17 and 23, and let's talk about those next month at our next office hours. I can do that now.
So this is kind of like your playbook.
I mean, this is my way of giving back to the entrepreneurial community and their executive teams. But yeah, it's a tool mainly for me to be able to go, and I've already started using it. I mean, I've been finished with the book for a long time now. I've had it in print for months. And every time I sit down with someone I mentor, they get a copy of my book now.
Nice.
And oftentimes I just basically go, okay, read these chapters and we'll talk next month.
So it enhances your mentoring. It's a tool for the mentoring.
It was a total selfice reason for writing the book.
Yeah. And have you found that's helped get deeper conversations?
100%.
Really? Yeah.
100%. I'm actually surprised by the quality of the conversations we can have.
Yeah.
Because then we have the same vocabulary.
Yeah. I've found that often I can say one thing sitting down one-on-one with someone and say the same thing on a podcast. And there's something about the record of what you say that it's more engaging and people pay attention to it. I don't know what it is. Perhaps maybe the book, I don't know if that happens to you, maybe another level
Maybe.
Of credibility. But for me, appreciate everyone listening to the podcast, and appreciate you chatting with us here today. You got a question for Sam? Right here.
I'm Sarah, currently work in venture capital on the investment team at a VC firm. How do you find the balance between the speed of hiring and taking time to find the right employee? This is something that a lot of startups struggle with because they spend a lot of time where they bring on like a team member for like a trial period and then it doesn't work and then they go back. So how do you kind of balance that?
It's a great question. The more time you spend up front, and I realize that startups feel they don't have the time to do this. Like, oh, let me just give you the mirror fog test and you're hired, because they're desperate to bring somebody on board. But hiring the wrong person is such an expensive decision. It's just and can become such an expensive mistake.
Painful.
Right? It's bad for morale. It's bad for your customers. I mean, and then you have to go through the whole process again. So having a structured interview process, and again, there are many out there. You can just go read a few good books. If you're a startup, leverage your connections outside of your business. If you have a board, leverage your board. If you have mentors at Capital Factory, leverage us. I give interviews for companies I mentor for people that they hire all the time.
Yep.
It's one of the things I do. I'm like, okay, if you're about to hire somebody really important, let me interview them for you, because I've done over 1,000 interviews, probably way more than that. And I can help you filter out the people that shouldn't be part of your company.
Yeah, that's common actually.
But have a
Just
structured
learn that.
process. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on it now, but you have to understand the competencies you're interviewing for. You have to actually write those down. You have to divide and conquer. Most people give a resume to one of a few of their employees, and they say simply, "Go interview that candidate," with no guidance whatsoever. And they end up asking the same questions from interviewer to interviewer to interviewer, and it's a complete waste of time. And so divide and conquer means, okay, John, you're going to focus on these three competencies in that part of the candidate's resume. Mary, you're going to focus on these two. Elizabeth, you're going to focus on these three. Completely different part. Assume that the other person's going to do their job at a minimum, right? And you're always looking for culture fit. You can have the best skill set you're looking for if they're a jerk to work with, if they don't have the right culture fit, if they're not in line with your company core values, you should not hire that person, because you're going to end up regretting that decision and having to let them go 3 to 4 months from now. So the more time you can spend up front in this process, I talk about a lot about that in my chapter on recruiting. It pays dividends down the road. Great question. Thank you.
Great question. And Sarah, since you asked the first question,
You get the book.
Get the book. Come on up here.
Woohoo!
Absolutely. Free counting. Thank you, Sarah. Well deserved. Well deserved. He may have a red pen in his pocket to sign it afterwards.
I may have signed it
He
already.
may have already signed it. So, also, all right. Who's next? All right, James.
Bummed I missed the book, but maybe there's.
You were too slow, James. Too slow.
Yeah, I know it happens. I'm James. I'm an entrepreneur here, so thanks for coming. This is awesome. So you mentioned the playbook a lot when it comes to sales, right?
Yes.
It feels like every 10 to 15 years, there's kind of a pretty big shift that happens that kind of can adjust these playbooks. I think on-prem to cloud, sales-led growth, the product-led growth. Obviously, now we're seeing changes in SEO and going on to GEO and large language models. How do you see this impacting the sales playbook moving forward in a new AI-driven era?
Yeah. So again, I'm making a distinction between B2B and B2C companies, right? So B2C, it's a SEO, marketing, that's a different playbook all by itself. But B2B, it's still going to be human beings selling to human beings. And by the way, that's going to be, even in the world of AI, one of the most precious currencies we have is that human touch. People want to buy from other human beings. People are not going to buy. If you're going to an online website to just have an AI bot answer your questions, you might buy that food supplement because they answered your questions sufficiently. But if I'm selling you a $10 million parking project, you're not buying from an AI chatbot. And so being able to establish those connections as human beings, that's going to be the currency of the future. I'm not saying you don't use all the AI tools on the back end. So, for example, one of the best tools is if I'm a salesperson, I'm going to come present to you. I have all these tools now to learn about, to research your business and research, frankly, you as a potential buyer. I never had that before, or it took me weeks and months. Now within an afternoon, I can come prepared to have my conversation with you, right? You leave nothing to chance, like never before, right? So I'm going to use as a salesperson all of the tools at my disposal. and I can help it craft the best email. I can help it, help me with follow-up. Oh, yeah, there's so many things that I can, that I can integrate AI in my CRM, but it's still going to be that for B2B, for B2B companies, it's going to be that human connection that's going to make the difference.
Yep.
That's never going to change.
I've heard that some of the most AI use cases have been coming out of the sales orgs, and that's where you really seen a lot of rubber to the road,
Amazing
ground level,
amazing
innovation.
tools,
Yeah.
and I still want to buy from a human being at the end of the day.
Right. Who's nice? Got one in the back. A couple more.
Hey Sam, thanks for coming out today. My name is Grayson, and in the first chapter of your book, you talk about the importance of curating a great first day experience for your new hires. For all the early stage founders out there who may be kind of neglecting that emphasis on culture, what advice do you have?
I'm so glad you asked that question. You found my first book online.
I know.
I love that.
Right.
Somebody did his research.
That's right. I thought I was the only one.
After you've spent all of this time and effort finding and interviewing for the right candidate, right? Most companies completely botch that first day, first week, first month experience for their new employees because it becomes an afterthought, right? The employee shows up, nobody's expecting them. They walk to your front lobby. It's like, hey, what's your name? Why are you here? And so curating this completely engaging first day immersive experience where everyone's expecting them and you celebrate their arrival. There's a banner with their name behind the, in the lobby. There's their laptop is ready, configured, passwords ready to go, access to the systems. There's all this swag from your company that they get on day one. You introduce them to the whole team, but most importantly, you put them to work right away. Yes, they maybe have to fill out a few HR forms, sure, but you want to put them to work immediately on their first day. Don't send them home after they fill out the HR forms. You want them to feel and live immediately what it's going to be like to work with your company that first day, that first week. Put them on a real project, get them immersed. If you can, assign them a mentor right off the bat, a senior employee that one-on-one can, it's great if they can help them train on the job that they're on, but if that's not appropriate, then an ambassador. An ambassador is somebody at the company whose sole job is to make you feel welcome and sort of navigate the intangibles of your business, right? They're not training you on your job, but they're just there as the ambassador to make you feel really welcome at that business. If you're moving somebody that has a family and you're moving them to your city, for example, then pair them up with an ambassador at your company that has a family with kids the same age. And so that those families can learn from one another. What are the school districts like in Austin? Where's the worst traffic at 8 a.m. in the morning? All that. What's the housing market look like? These kinds of attention, and by the way, that costs nothing. Like if you really think through it, so inexpensive to make that first impression. And new employees are nervous, right? They've made a big decision to come join your business. And so how you treat them on the first day, first week, first month leaves a lasting impression.
How about for companies these days that maybe don't have that physical office?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Everything I told you about other than lunch can happen virtually.
Still almost too much.
You can assign a mentor, you can assign an ambassador, you can have all the same kind of welcome, activities, introduction to the team, all in a conference room with a monitor, and you can make them feel just as special online, and you can certainly assign them a project immediately, but none of that requires being present physically.
Yeah. Just recognizing them, celebrating them.
Yes.
It's as easy as that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love it. We started as much as we can. We try to have our new employees either start at our company conference. We do it twice a year, or at one of our cornerstone events. And then they're thrown right into it. They see everybody and get fully immersed from the beginning.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then after the first day, after the first week and first month, if you can put together a formal employee onboarding program, then that's even better. Now, what is an onboarding program? I'll go back to Catapult Systems. We had, for all new employees, we were hiring 12 to 15 new employees a month. So we had once a month a Catapult boot camp where we would fly all of our new employees from all over the country and all their offices to headquarters in Austin. And it was typically a 2 to 4 day program, depending on what department they were joined. But day one was always the same, and it was taught by me. I put combat fatigues on, a black Catapult t-shirt and a red beret and combat boots. And I taught cultural indoctrination on day one. What is cultural indoctrination day? Well, we talked about things like, this is our history. This is the story of our company. This is what we believe in. These are our core values, our core purpose, our big, hairy, audacious goal. We talked about our golden rules of customer service, how we treat our customers and what's expected. And all of that is told through stories. And if the founder can do it in person, then you create this bond with these new employees that, again, they might go back to Minneapolis. You might not see them for a few months, but you have this immediate connection with that team. And then that becomes a class. They all really get to know each other during this boot camp as well, do a lot of exercises to introduce themselves and icebreakers. And they go back to their respective offices having made this connection. Again, pays dividends down the road.
Yeah. Another version of that we've seen here is companies will rent space at Capital Factory for 1 or 2 months, and they'll have the new company cohorts come work together for a month or two, and then they go off and
I love that.
take the remote role.
You know, we again, I know we've moved to a mixed environment, certainly since COVID. I'm still a big fan of spending some days in the office. I think it's great to work some days remote to get some focus work done, but it's really hard to build culture and friendships on Zoom.
It's hard.
Right. So to the extent that it's possible for your company, it's not possible for every company, but to the extent that you can bring people in, and what you just described, I love, but those relationships, that culture is really established in person.
Yep. Yeah. And I think now we get the best of both worlds.
Yes.
The right things you do at home, and there's a bunch of that, but also, it's what we're doing here tonight. It's hard to beat. So I wish you wore the fatigues and the hat. Tell us that story.
I have lots of pictures.
Nice. Sharon will throw on the podcast notes. And Art, you got a question?
Sure. Just a question. You're talking a lot about culture, a lot about onboarding. I kind of want to back up earlier than that, and probably earlier in the history of the company, because every company starts as a blinking in the back of your brain, and now I got to go do this. And I'm in that similar place. We're coming from a solopreneur type environment and looking at what is the first employee. Yes, that first inkling is, hey, I need to go out and I need to replicate myself because I trust what I do and I trust how I do things. I need to clone myself to be the second employee. But I've spent some time now interviewing other people who are in similar businesses, say, who was the first employee? Who should have been the first employee? How do you designate them? How do you go about finding that and determining what should be that position number 2?
And I'm assuming here you're not talking about a partner in the sense of, or could be. Yeah. I think that the best founding team are people that are actually vastly different from one another. Like if they mirror all of your skill sets and your personality, then you're going to be missing something in the team. The more diverse your team. So for example, if I meet a young founder here and it's clear to me that they're not the natural salesperson for their business, maybe they're the hardcore introverted engineer that's developed this amazing thing. And my first question is, okay, so it's probably not going to be you. Do you have a partner who on your team is going to be the salesperson? And if they don't have an answer for that question, I'm like, listen, your next employee is somebody that has that skill set, sales and or marketing that is going to complement your engineering mindset, allow you to go focus on product and engineering, and let them go focus on customer acquisition, partnerships, etc. And so you're looking for, I think, very complementary skills. At least that would be my recommendation.
Good question.
Okay, so I heard you talk about how at Catapult, kind of finding a niche for the Microsoft solutions was instrumental for your success. So when it comes to finding a niche, what kind of signals do you usually look for? And what's indicative that it might be the right one?
So I mentioned some of this earlier when I talked about, okay, when you're a startup, you cast a very wide net because you really don't know what that product market fit is going to be, and you're looking for what is, which customers, which industry, what size company, what geography, if that's appropriate, can where you have an unfair advantage, right? The more you are different for that customer, the more you're different than everyone else in your industry, the faster you're going to grow. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for how can you set yourself apart from all of your competition? And for every company, that's going to be different, right? For a good bakery, it could be a combination of location and their secret recipes, or customer service. For a technology company, it could be you have a whole patent portfolio or you're first to market, or it's different for every company. But that's your job as a founder, is to very quickly zero in on what is my unfair advantage against all of my competition.
Kind of do need to end up being the best in the world. It sounds daunting, but especially if you're out pitching the next unicorn, you really do. Because even now, when it's a few people, you got a few customers, no one cares. But if it's good enough, like, someone's going to come try to take you down and compete real hard, and you're going to have to win against that person. And it might be Google, it might be Elon Musk, it might be someone really influential. And so it might sound daunting. And I heard that. I remember when I was first getting into startups and someone telling me that, I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? But I really do need to be one of the best. One of the best. All right. We got another question.
Jeff Everidge from San Diego, Sam's friend.
Hey, Jeff.
Sam. Hey, Sam. It dawned on me that the FlashParking guys had kind of won the lottery when they had you as lead investor and to become president. And it equally dawned on me that I don't know any founders that would give up the role of president. So I was wondering if you could talk about how that conversation unfolded, how you navigated that.
Super easy, yeah.
And then the follow-up question is, how does an entrepreneur in this audience or listening to this podcast get you to be president for a couple of years and scale and grow?
They can all come talk to me at office hours for sure, and that's totally free. In the case of FlashParking, the young founder, Juan Rodriguez, he was already the face of the company. He was the visionary in the industry. I did not want to take his CEO role. I had already been in front of the camera, I was very happy to take the number 2 president role, where I could help the company navigate all the potholes of scaling a technology company sort of from behind the scenes. So he really stayed, he was the industry face of the company and continued to do that very, very well to this day. And I could be this sort of older guy behind the scenes, kind of helping to build all the parts of the business with all the scars I'd accumulated over 3 decades.
So it was an added role?
Yeah, he was president and CEO. We just broke that role in 2.
Hey, Sam. This may be one of the chapters in your book, but how does a startup founder or set of founders know when it's time to pivot? When they don't want to, they got to figure that out. What are the things that they've got to do?
Yeah, again, part of your job as a startup is you're going to try lots of stuff, and you're going to try to keep what works, because you don't know what works yet. And so when to pivot, again, I don't know if there's a hard, steadfast rule for that. I think once you've, beaten up against a certain product market fit, and you're just not getting any traction, I think it does help to go get some outside, thoughts on that, right? And again, Capital Factory is such a great place for this, where, all the startups here have access to all these mentors, because chances are we've probably seen that, that dance before. And so go get some other perspectives on, listen, beating my head up, against this, trying to solve this problem for 6 months, I'm getting no traction at all. Nobody's really buying our stuff. What am I doing wrong? Go get some outside perspective on that. They might be able to go, okay, but it's pretty clear to me. No, again, the beautiful thing about, I think, folks that are part of Catapult Factory is they come here to get input, right?
Yeah.
Which is great.
Right.
Many entrepreneurs don't.
I think a lot of us come to give honest input. I think one of the hard parts is all your friends will try to say nice things to you about your startup, and you might go and try to get outside input, but so many people just want to say nice things. You got to break through that. You got to get candid feedback. And I think, when we're every day with all entrepreneurs, like, you got nothing but time to just give you the truth and what I really believe. And I try to talk founders into pivoting and shutting down all the time. If I can talk you into shutting down, you should probably just shut down. Like, right? If it's gonna happen, like, no one's gonna talk you out of it. But so yeah, I think there's like an art to discerning through the feedback and trying to find people that are gonna shoot you straight and not sugarcoat it.
Agreed.
Good questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Sarah.
Great insights, by the way. So you said before that startups need to like tackle different type of consumers because we don't know the market fit yet, right? So how do we actually represent our market in that pitch deck that we're going to do to a VC or any angel investors? Like, how can we actually decide the market with that?
Yeah. By the way, that's really difficult because as an investor, you see a lot of pitch decks, and you can see pretty quickly which companies have already figured out that product market fit and which ones are still searching. And so, unfortunately, if your pitch deck looks like you're still searching for that product market fit, that's going to be, I'm talking to the VC person here. That's harder to invest in. It really is helpful to already have figured that out. If you're going to go raise, now your friends and family round, they'll invest in you just because of you. And if you're a repeat entrepreneur, investors will invest in you because they believe you're going to figure it out. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, the bar is higher. And so your friends and family, that's easy money. By the time you go get to that seed round, it's nice to have demonstrated, listen, these customers will actually pay for what we have. And we've found a real target here. We just need to have some capital to start, to put that sales team in place, that marketing campaign in place to really take that to the next level. If you haven't figured that out, it's probably tough to raise that round, honestly.
And what I would add is in the early days, it's a hypothesis, right? And I think before you go and run any experiments or pitch anybody, there's a lot that you can learn out there on your customers and on your product and what you're trying to do, and especially with chat and other tools. Like you can make a pretty informed estimate. You're never gonna know for sure until you test it, but I would just pick your hypothesis, be confident in it, but also open-minded, knowing that it's just a hypothesis, and once you go out there, it might change. In the early days, and with the real early investors, and that's normal and accepted, but you don't want to seem like confused about it or like indifferent. I think having confident hypothesis, but then being ready where an investor says, well, those people actually do this and they buy that, you're like, oh wow, that's great. You go think, hope they're usually not going to shut it down that easily, but listen to it, and it might change. It probably will change over time,
and that's okay.
It's the process through which you're going about it, and it's less about having that right market when you pitch me, and more about having the right mentality to go into this venture and be adaptive and learning to get to the right answer, right? And so, it's a really good question. It's a tough thing to manage. You got one more? Anything else? All right, one more. Okay. Bring us home.
Hi. And I want to ask you, what should a startup have to make you see that this is future unicorn for you?
Wow.
Right to the point.
Man, I wish I could identify all the future unicorns. If I had the answer, I might not tell you. I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, the first thing you would think of is there really a big market that can even support a company that can get to that status? But beyond that, if you find out, if anybody else here knows, I would like to know the answer to that question as an angel investor. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still looking.
They kind of just appear, right? That's what unicorns do.
Yeah, and I mean, half the time we're wrong as investors anyway. Like, we don't know.
More than
we
half.
think, right? So I wish I knew the answer to that question, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. We do have 10 unicorns in our portfolio now. And I think
You know something.
I've seen some. I think that's one thing. Kind of back to like recruiting people. The more you've seen something for real, like the more you'll recognize it. But it's an extreme mindset these founders have. Like they really go big and they don't compromise on that. And I think probably 99.9% of the world like doesn't buy it until all of a sudden, Colossal's like an example in the portfolio. All of a sudden you've de-extincted the dire wolf and you're on the front page of Time magazine, and everything that you thought was totally crazy, that everyone thought was crazy, is true, and it's real, and they did it, and they're worth $10 billion.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's wild, but that's I think a lot. It's that audacity to go and do something that's never done before and say you're going to be the best in the world. One, it's like this is something where there's no one else in the world that could do this at all. So you just do it once, you're going to be the best in the world. To me, that's another way to put it. It's like, hey, what's your path? What's your easiest path to becoming the best in the world at something? And then if you see that path, you've got a good chance. And even then, like that's the exciting part. But it's like I think everything you could line up and take everything that you could learn through AI and try to answer that question, and you still wouldn't get it quite right. All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much.
We made it.
Appreciate you coming on, sharing little insights to the book. For those of you listen, please check it out. Amazon, the gift shop here at Capital Factory, a bunch of other places. Before you go, I want to give you a little token of our appreciation for coming on the show here.
I love that.
I don't know if you can see it here, but I'll explain it. The United States this year in 2025 minted a special coin. It's the Texas Innovation Coin. I just had a bunch of these. And if you can't see it, we'll show you, but it has an astronaut doing a spacewalk here, and it says Texas at the bottom. Stands for everything and it's almost like they made it for us at Capital Factory. Super Bowl, and got a bunch of those and excited to share with you on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Great crowd, great questions.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Austinpreneur. Don't forget to check out capitalfactory.com to learn more about us and join our community. If you have thoughts about the show or ideas on how we can work together, reach out to me directly via email, NickSpiller@capitalfactory.com. Shout out to the Capital Factory Dream Team for making this podcast possible, and special thanks to Aaron Handworker, who masterfully recorded and edited the show. Come back next week for a whole new episode.